Hey everyone, today I want to talk about the fact that social media and the internet can oftentimes be a measure of self-worth. And don't let this be what you do. Don't define yourself by any form of social media or how many followers you have. Right now, we have social media and we also have the internet, and it's blowing up incredibly. It's not over, it's just beginning in certain ways, although I think it's definitely gotten underway and we can kind of see where it's going. The thing is, though, you have all these people out there who are just consumed by it. They see thousands of pictures of perfect women, very beautiful women. Some of them photoshopped, some of them seems like all natural, but who knows? And you see it on all sorts of platforms and websites and apps on the phone, from Instagram to YouTube to Vine to Twitter to Facebook to Shots to Snapchat and on and on and on. And the problem with this is that oftentimes social media and the internet makes it seem like these are amazing lives. If you've seen anything on the internet or social media, you can kind of start to understand what it's like. And for children or the youth who really are adept at this and are exposed to this, oftentimes unrestricted by their parents because they don't really understand this, they can hit a point where they're on a Instagram feed and there's just all these women that are just exceptionally beautiful, which can affect both genders. The females can be, they're constantly being inundated with nowadays a infinite amount of streams of perfect looking women and just be completely warped in their self-image of themselves. And then for guys, they can just be like completely overwhelmed in terms of what they expect out of women, or their lifestyle, because of all they're seeing out there. And then their standards can be ridiculous, or they can just be very grouchy about life because it's not up to par. And that's one of the big things that you see. You see a lot of guys just jealous online, or they look at these photos of someone with a lot of followers and they think, wow, I wish I had a life like that. But oftentimes the truth is that this is what people want you to think. This is what people put up there to make you think that this is their life. Not always, but oftentimes it's a one-dimensional side to them. It's one slice of their entire lives. Or some of it can be deliberately fashioned or edited or cut to make it look a certain way. And there's a lot of reasons for this. There's a lot of money behind it if you have millions of followers and so forth. And also you can get a lot of arrogance from obtaining success. And there's now thousands of YouTube channels with over 1 million subscribers, and hundreds, if not thousands, of other social media platforms that have millions of followers. You'd be surprised. Pinterest has lots of users with millions upon millions of followers. Same thing with Vine and other social networks. I believe right now the most followed person on Pinterest has like 18 million followers. And I think the biggest ones are like Vine and YouTube. These people, like, maybe they stumble across something by luck, in just the way that they edit their videos, that they're skilled and talented at a certain thing, and they can get a very huge ego with it. They can get very arrogant. And it's not just this, like, it happens in all areas of life. Someone gets very successful in the music industry or entertainment industry, they oftentimes can just naturally just spiral out of control because they get so arrogant, thinking that they did it themselves and they're so much better than everyone. And that can lead to a lot of problems in itself. And so don't let stuff like Instagram or YouTube define your self-worth. Don't let what other people think define your self-worth. And there's this great quote. It's actually a post on social media platform, and I think it's a great message, and I think it's something that should be spread. And before I get to it, I guess one thing that should be said is that what I'm noticing is that it's still growing and burgeoning and allowing for a lot of people who may have just very clearly just went along their lives as pretty ordinary individuals to now just blow up. Like literally there are stars out there with millions of followers on Vine who are just pretty normal people, but they just happen to have a very good knack for creating 6-second videos with great production on a very low budget of just iPhone and exceptional editing skills and great ideas. And it's like it's very clear that had they been born in a different time and age where this social network or app was not introduced, they probably would have just been normal individuals. Like they wouldn't have had the influence that they did or the spark that they did to create that following. So there's an element of luck involved. And I bring that up because I'm seeing more and more of these people come about because these apps are allowing low barrier to entry and a new potential skill or I guess way of creating a following and influence and potentially money. That's not the main driver that these people do it. It's not even a driver at all. The most successful people who do this they didn't do it at all because of money, but creation of value basically that's useful in an economic sense, and can create a tremendous following and impact and influence on the world that wasn't there before, and it's just creating a lot of people that are creating enormous followings, and this will continue to happen 10, 20, 100 years down the line, and it'll get more and more crazy as it goes on. Who knows what's going to happen to cap it, and there are some dark sides and dangers to it, of course. But generally, it's been quite interesting and entertaining. And so, I do want to address some of the downsides, like the fact that, again, it can create an enormous time waster for the consumers. But again, it's kind of like TV and radio that came before it. Like, there was always consumer-driven time wasters involved. So one can argue it's just like another thing. But anyways, I want to bring up this quote. I think it's a great one. It was actually a photo posted on Instagram with a caption. You can write captions for these photos, and the photo is simply it's a very simple photo of a few words, and it says, "Don't let Instagram define your self-worth." And the caption reads, "For those who look at someone else's Instagram and say, 'I wish my life was like that,' know that often Instagram is not who people really are, but who they want people to think they are. I'm choosing to not let other people define me." It's a very interesting quote, and what's more interesting about this is that this was posted by Justin Bieber, who, if you guys don't know, he's a musician. A lot of people say he has quite an ego, and some of his other recent Instagram pictures and past old photos are kind of implies that he may have an ego a bit of arrogance, maybe more than a bit of arrogance. And again, some of the stuff may be for promotional reasons, but again, everyone has their opinions on him. Like one could argue, like, do you really have to choose to define yourself in this way, given that you've already made so much money? But again, to each his own. He's one of the most followed people on Instagram with over 21 million followers, and it's just interesting for him to post that because he's definitely been through a lot of experiences in the limelight and in this lifestyle, and met and seen and been a part of this Instagram scene where he's seeing some of the people with the most followers, and it's interesting that he would put that up there. And again, you always have to take things with a bit of grain of salt. Who knows if that's actually true? But I think it may be, that there's all these people who have these followings. And oftentimes I think it's definitely possible that people, oftentimes with a lot of followers, sometimes with very little followers, they post photos which can be just, it can take literally less than a second to create, sometimes up to an hour or more depending on how professionally it was made, but it's just a snapshot of someone's life, and it could just be very artificially manufactured. I'm not saying like people's lifestyles are fake, but you should not go to the extremes. Oftentimes the extremes are wrong, where you, for instance, one extreme is to immediately believe everything based off what you see on someone's photos online or videos on YouTube, and just immediately take it for granted. And then the other extreme is just immediately saying everything's fake. I feel like it's oftentimes in the middle. And so I think it's just very interesting and very interesting, and a good thing to ponder and think about where the world globally is going, because I've sort of studied it and observed it intensely, and Latin America and Asian countries are they're lagging behind slightly, but in a lot of ways they're caught up because of modern technology and lower cost of technology, and how they're opening up, and the wealth that's being acknowledged, that's being created. So long story short, there's a lot of social networks that are very similar to what's now available in America, that are opening up in all sorts of countries in the world, and more will open up as more and more countries out of the thousands out there get to that point where they can access the internet. And who knows what that can lead to. Generally, it seems like most people have a nationwide presence, but global presence, that's very hard to achieve. But I'm more so concerned, not so much about someone achieving global presence, although that's a very interesting ordeal to think about. But on top of that, this whole idea of the dangers that will be created from this, because again, I mean, there's oftentimes a lot of trickery, scams out there, but now with technology, it's connected the world in a way that a lot of things are much faster, and you can access and influence and talk to a much wider audience than ever was possible, like in the history of mankind, which means there are potential dark sides to it. And I actually watched this discussion by a panel of very successful people of all walks of life, some of them very rich, some of them very just influential in civil rights and all sorts of movements in countries like in Africa and so forth. And one of the panelists was Jack Ma, who, if you guys don't know, he is the CEO of Alibaba, who is it's like $1 billion company in China. And they did this discussion, and one of the questions that they debated was the dark sides of the internet. And he took a pose that I didn't completely agree with. Although he was very humble about it, he was like, heck, I don't know if I'm right or wrong. I could be completely wrong. What do I know, really? And his whole stance was that I don't agree with the other panelists in that, saying that there's dark sides to the internet, because when he started off 10 years ago in the internet, he was told by experts of the internet, and he remarked on how ridiculous it was that there was even experts of the internet back in the day. But he was told by the experts of the internet how like there's all these points of things that will potentially be mistakes or horrendous things that the internet might bring, and 10 years later none of those things came up as actual obstacles. It was a bunch of other things that were not expected. And so he used that as a point, as saying that, maybe we shouldn't, maybe that's not the case. But I do think for this sort of thing, with the connectedness of the internet, it can bring a lot of bad things as well. There's the whole issue of pornography. Then there's the issue of, I guess the main topic of this video was, which is the fact that with that huge influence, there's also a huge influence for misleading or tricking the youth, who oftentimes are not educated or know any better. And I mean, if you look at countries like North Korea, there's definite potential, as you can see, for people to be brainwashed. So it's like, if money is involved or ulterior motives are involved, then the youth can definitely be tricked by photos online into thinking, oh, this is how we want to be. But again, I think, a long story short, like, again, media in general, before all the stuff came around with the internet, in one way or other, also was like a thing before this that also did the same thing. Media and culture and pop culture before this was, in the last 20, 30 years, not really before that, it kind of just like convinced a lot of youth that, oh, this is the perfect body type, or this is what the ideal person should look like or behave like, and so forth. And it can definitely affect individuals. But having said that, I think maybe it's not, none of this is a big deal at all, because nowadays what I'm seeing is even some mainstream songs like Meghan Trainor, she did a song all about that bass, which went crazy. It was very successful, millions of views on the music video, and that was all about how discarding the photoshopped body image that pop culture sort of adapts and cherishes. And then you see a lot of individuals who have broken free from this sort of trap of, oh, this is my ideal body, to a certain extent. And I do think, looking at a general population, it's like most of these individuals are far from what the ideal standard is like. They're all different in so many different ways, and so far from the ideal perfect model standard. And to varying degrees, I feel like, nowadays they do have generally a good sense of individualism, generally. But again, we'll see what happens. I don't even know. But I hope you got something out of this video. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys later.